clinical psychologist who works in the family courts. I am not a forensic psychologist. I do not conduct forensic custody evaluations for a variety of reasons. I'm a clinical psychologist. I do treatment, not custody. So what I'm going to be talking about today is a treatment for a particular diagnosis within the family courts. It's not a treatment for everything in the family. It's specific to the diagnosis. And so starting with just sort of a disclaimer regarding this, is I am a consultant currently working in the family courts. So that's all I do. I don't have a private practice anymore of patients. I am entirely in the family courts doing second opinion consults on forensic evaluations, mental health reports, GAL reports, and so on. So the way I describe it is there's an attorney in the matter who believes that the application of knowledge from clinical psychology will be helpful to a set of information, will be helpful to the court in making its decisions. So they bring me a set of information, the forensic custody evaluation or the reunification therapy reports or whatever. I apply the knowledge of clinical psychology, and then that goes into my testimony in the relative into the court system. Now, as a consultant, that's my website up there. I have a consulting website. You can go afterwards. I have sections for attorneys, mental health professionals, parents, and then seminars on YouTube. And so I have a lot of more additional information up there. But I've also produced various books and booklets for the family courts. The large one is Foundations. That's about a 300-page, I think of it as a diagnostic treatise. It describes the pathology across 3 levels, family systems, personality disorder pathology, and attachment. Then I've got several booklets that are designed as tools. So those are about 50-page booklets. The first one, the assessment of attachment related pathology in the family courts. It describes a 6-session clinical diagnostic assessment. And so when parents go into the family courts, they say, I'd like a clinical diagnostic assessment rather than a forensic custody evaluation. The court says, what's that? They give them the booklet. They say this. Now, ultimately, people will understand what that means, and they'll just start practicing clinical psychology in the family courts again, rather than forensic custody evaluation. And so that booklet will disappear because it's basic clinical psychology. The other one I produced is this, the contingent visitation schedule. And I brought a bunch, they're over here. Feel free to take one. And they're available on Amazon. And again, this is a tool. So what parents are currently doing on treatment interventions is they're going in and saying, or their attorneys are saying, we would like a contingent visitation schedule. The court says, what's that? They say this. And so this provides a definition to the courts as to what they're asking for. And I've got other booklets like the narcissistic parent. So I will be talking about a intervention, but while it's a booklet that's available and you can look at, ultimately even this is going to disappear as unnecessary. So let's talk about the contingent visitation schedule. By the way, for those of you just entered, there's booklets back here. Feel free to take one. So the contingent visitation schedule, this booklet, is a standard behavior program. So if you've worked in the school system, you'll just recognize this. So yeah, okay, I got it. It's also using principles from strategic family therapy. And I'll explain how those two models integrate and what's happening with all of this. So in terms of the behavior program part, the targeted behaviors, think again of a kid in classroom. We're going to target behaviors and put it on a contingency schedule. So the targeted behaviors in this case are the child's affection, cooperation, and social involvement rated daily by the parent on a 7-point Likert scale. Those ratings then go into the family therapist, who then uses those ratings as a contingency where the symptoms are present or absent, and will adjust the visitation schedule based on the child's symptoms that are coming in. So that's the target behaviors and the outcome measure that we use to measure it. We'll talk more about that going forward. The definitions for the behavior program, what the child doesn't get out of the chair, the child turns into homework kind of thing, is a successful day is defined as ratings of 4 or higher on those three items: affection, cooperation, social involvement. Because when I was setting the rules on this, I have a 7-point Likert scale. 4 is dead on middle. That's what I wanted. I want a middle point. Now, when I was thinking, what should we make a successful day? Do we 7-point Likert scale? Do we say 4 or higher? And actually, I feel 3, 4, 5 is normal. We're not that precise. So I'm just looking for normal range. So in my practice, I just do 3, 4, 5 or higher on this, because it's a range of, and 1 or 2, you're not successful. So I set it at 4 because in school, I'm always kind of zone of proximal development, but that also allows you to negotiate it down. John says 4 is too hard. You go, okay, how about 3, 4, 5 or higher? No, I don't even negotiate it down. I just say 3, 4, 5 and higher, which is a communication to everybody. Feel free to change the parameters. This is a behavior program. It's a tool for you. Once you recognize what you do, use the tool. If you change too much, you're going to destroy the behavioral structure of it, but you're allowed to flex things. So the definitions is 4 or 3 or higher on the 3 ratings, and a successful week is defined as 5 successful days in a 7-day period. So they don't have to be perfect the week. They can mess up 2 weeks. But now if you're getting 4 successful days, that's not a successful week. And then we go into our contingency. So the contingent visitation schedule is a strategic family systems intervention altering how the symptom confers power. So strategic family systems therapy is Chloe Madonna's J. Haley. And what they look at is how the symptom confers power. And then they give a prescriptive intervention, which this is, that will alter how the symptom is conferring power. Once you alter that, it's no longer, and it will drop away. So the secondary gain, the rewards to the pathological parent for producing pathology in their child, is to manipulate the court's decisions around child custody, because it works. The child's got all symptomatic toward a parent, the court says, well, hey, what's going on? And so the pathological parent gets custody because they produced pathology in the child. It's also a weapon of spousal abuse. They use the child and the child's induced symptoms as a way of accusing the other parent of being, abusive and putting them through the court system. It's a spousal abuse, using the child as a weapon. That's the second reward they get from inducing pathology. And then the third is we're dealing with narcissistic borderlines. And so the narcissist, meeting their own needs, I'm the wonderful parent, and you're the awful parent. So they get that grandiose restoration of their defenses after the divorce. You're an inadequate spouse. No, I'm the wonderful one, you're the inadequate one. That's a narcissistic. And the borderline's fear of abandonment. And so they get the child, and they use the child as a regulatory object. So those are your 3 secondary gain rewards that the parent gets, the pathological parent, for producing pathology in the child. Those are what we're going to target. Okay, that right there, take away. Because as long as we're rewarding the parent for producing pathology in the child, guess what? They're going to produce pathology in the child. So we have to remove the rewards for doing that, the secondary gain. So this booklet describes the structure. The booklet is not necessary if you understand standard behavior programs. And mostly it's just to go to the court to say this is it. So today's seminar will provide all the information that you need to set up and administer the contingent visitation schedule. So, as I said, this booklet allows the litigants to go into the court and provide a specific reference when they, in their request for orders. Courts establish custody. I don't have an opinion on that. So when the court established custody, what's going to happen is we're going to flex that a little bit based on the symptoms. But we're going to need authorization from the court to flex it a little bit. So we need to tell the court how, what are the rules and things we're going to be flexing on. So then the court says, okay, I agree to this flex, then we're going to need a family therapist to monitor the symptoms and the contingencies involved. So the court must understand what it's authorizing. When the court authorizes the contingent visitation schedule, there's going to be a need for organizing family therapy. And that's currently where my practice is we got parents who are requesting this from the court, but we don't have the mental health people who are familiar with it to run it. We'll get there, but you're like, the APA telling you we're going to need this. So get familiar with it, and it's simple. So the role of the family therapist in this is to receive those ratings, those daily ratings, put them in an Excel file. Then also when you meet with them weekly, you're going to monitor the fidelity of those ratings. So if there's been a 1 or 2, you're going to talk about it and say what's happened, and you do applied behavioral analysis, a little behavior chain interviewing to figure out what's going on. And is that a 3 or is it a 2 or what? And in doing that, you're going to be normalizing for the parent and the child what's normal and what you, but you're also going to be monitoring that the targeted parent isn't like manipulating those ratings for whatever. So you're going to, second feature is to monitor the fidelity ratings. And what I've found when parents use that 7-point Likert scale, affection, cooperation, social involvement, parents develop some sort of internal calibration. What's a 4? What's a 3? What's a 5? And it's very sensitive. So each parent differs in their calibration, but it's good for them. And so you can get really good insight as to what's happening with the kid over time because it's calibrated and you just monitor the fidelity of that. So, and then your third obligation or responsibility is to trigger the contingencies when the definitions or the criteria are met. So, starting with sort of another disclaimer, diagnosis guides treatment. And in terms of custody, from a clinical psychologist perspective, in the absence of child abuse, parents have the right to parent according to their cultural values, personal values, religious values. So if you're not abusing your child, I don't have an opinion. You have a broad latitude on it. In the absence of child abuse, each parent should have as much time and involvement as possible with their child. That's just good for the child, good for the parent. That's my opinion. And in the absence of child abuse, if we restrict either parent's time and involvement with the child, it's going to damage the child's attachment bond to that parent, thereby harming the child and harming the parent. So the only relevant question is there child abuse? So that's my role as a clinical psychologist in the family courts. I'm looking, is there child abuse? Custody is not my concern, and that's why I don't do custody evaluation. I think it's a bad thing for psychologists to do. I'm not a legal person. I don't decide on custody. I'm diagnosis and treatment. And the diagnosis of concern is child abuse. So here's your differential diagnosis. You can learn all about what that is and why and how. But this is your differential diagnosis. Either when a child is rejecting a parent, that's a motivational change in the primary motivational system, directional change. Instead of motivating the bond to the parent, the child is trying to flee a parent. Well, that's child abuse that causes that. So the first rule out is child abuse by the targeted parent means the child's trying to flee. Is it physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect abuse, psychological abuse? So that's your first rule out. If, however, it's not child abuse, then you've got a false attachment pathology being induced by a parent. And what you'll find is that a shared persecutory delusion, the narcissist borderline is collapsing into persecutory delusions. And if you look around in our society, I bet you can find some examples of that in a broader society where the narcissist and borderlines will collapse into persecutory delusion. So that's what we have. Then we have the false, the factitious attachment pathology being imposed on the child for secondary gain to the parent. That's your diagnosis, factitious disorder imposed on another. And then producing delusional pathology in a factitious disorder destroys the child. That's child psychological abuse. Now we have duty to protect obligations and his spousal abuse using the child as a weapon. So either one of those is going to be there. The child's trying to flee a parent. Unfortunately, forensic custody evaluations don't tell us which parent. And so as a clinical psychologist, diagnosis guides treatment. So I'm always coming in saying we need a clinical diagnostic assessment which parent is abusing the child because our treatment's different. So just as a way of cautionary note, when I'm experiencing the family courts right now, the patient should never have to explain the pathology to the doctor. In the family courts, patients are explaining the pathology to the doctor. I encounter it all the time, and I get reports back from patients, from the parents and family, that when they talk about, is this a factitious disorder, would you assess for that, the involved people, mental health people, retaliate because they've had a narcissistic injury, and so I've had to back off telling parents to actually ask for diagnosis because it puts them in danger from the forensic psychologist. Oh my goodness. So there's problems. In addition, if I need to educate you about what the nature of the pathology is, that would indicate you're not competent by the very need to be educated. So I shouldn't have to educate you about what it is. And it's 2.01, 2.04 from your side, 1.04, 1.05 from my side. So the purpose of today's talk, though, is not to describe what the pathology is. You can figure that out. The purpose of today's talk is to tell you about a treatment for the pathology. Diagnosis guides treatment. Treatment for cancer is different than the treatment for diabetes. And so when you look at this differential diagnosis, what the contingent visitation schedule is designed to treat is that, a factitious disorder imposed on another. It's designed as a treatment for a factitious disorder, factitious attachment pathology imposed on the child for secondary gain. It is not the treatment for authentic child abuse by the targeted parent. In fact, it's exactly the wrong thing to do if you have targeted abuse. So we really need that diagnosis because we need to know which parent we're protecting the child from. Once we get that information, we can act. And so that's what needs to happen in the family courts. We need these diagnostic assessments. This is from the ICD-11 describing a factitious disorder imposed on another. Factitious disorder imposed on another is characterized by feigning, falsifying, or inducing medical, psychological, or behavioral signs and symptoms of injury in another person, most commonly a child dependent, associated with identified deception. The identified deception is deceiving the court regarding the parenting of the other parent. It's creating a false belief in the court that the other parent is abusing the child because the child's got symptoms like they are, but they're false symptoms. They're being induced. So the ICD-10 goes on to say, the individual seeks treatment for the other person or otherwise presents him or her as ill. That's exactly what happened. They go to the court and say, my child's injured. They go to the mental health person, and, oh, they're being abusive of my child. So they produce symptoms in the child and then present the child as being injured or impaired. The impairment is the impaired parent-child relationship with the targeted parent based on feigned, falsified, or induced signs, symptoms, and injuries. So it's spot on. Meets diagnostic criteria, factitious disorder imposed on another by narcissistic or target personality to manipulate the court. So, with this, if you return a diagnosis of a false attachment pathology, a factitious disorder imposed on another in the child psychology, and that whole domain, you got that factitious, this is your treatment. If you have child abuse by the targeted parent, this is not your treatment. So we're going to need a diagnosis. And you'll understand why once I get into explaining. So yeah, what's your diagnosis? And that's what I'm always asking. People bring me the attorneys bring me these mental health reports, and I say, what's the diagnosis and what's the support for that? I need to see, like ADHD, 6 and 9 symptoms. Well, tell me what the symptoms are that support diagnosis of either authentic child abuse by the targeted parent or factitious child attachment pathology, psychological abuse by the allied parent. Tell me which one, and then I'll be able to treat it. So now moving into a description of the contingent visitation schedule. You can look at this from two different perspectives. Both of these are equally valid, and so if you feel more comfortable with behavioral psychology, then you apply that understanding. I feel comfortable with family systems, so I tend to go think of it as family systems perspective, but they're both the same. So, from a behavior therapy perspective, it's not applied behavioral, it's functional behavioral analysis. So again, if you worked in the schools, you know what a functional behavior, because it's required by the Individuals with Disability Act before schools can put a behavior program in for kids. They have to do a functional behavioral analysis. So that's what it is. We're going to do a functional behavioral analysis. And so we identify the function served by the symptom, by the behavior, and make that behavior symptom ineffective, irrelevant, or inefficient in serving its function. That's the functional behavioral analysis. From a strategic family systems perspective, that's Chloe Madonis, Jay Haley, the function served by the symptom is to confer power. So you can see how they both line up. This just says broad function. This one says the specific function is to confer power. And so what they do, strategic family system, you identify how it's conferring power, and then you develop a prescriptive intervention that's going to alter that. And then the symptom will drop away. So either one of those frameworks will be fine to understand it. So the continued visitation schedule is a behavioral and strategic family systems intervention, a prescriptive intervention that alters how the symptom confers power. So let's talk about the functional behavioral analysis component for a second. What the contingent visitation schedule is going to do is provide clear guidelines, clear structure for initiating the various phases of contingency management on this. So we're going to start with ratings on the outcome measure. That's be how we decide where the symptoms are. And so they're going to be affection, 1 to 7 on a Likert scale. Now what those are monitoring, affection, when you're monitoring, that's the attachment networks, the love and bonding. Then we monitor the emotional regulation networks through cooperation. If they're flexible and then they're going to be cooperative. If they lock up, then the emotions are kind of locked up. And then social involvement looks at their mood and arousal. So as I'm reading these outcome measures, if I see their affection go down and their arousal go up, that's an unhappy human. They're sad and they're But if I see their affection go up and their arousal go up, that's a happy human, because they're happy and they're aroused. And so you can begin to read what's going on with your child in between the sessions just by getting these ratings coming in. So I find it very useful. I know what's coming into my office when I show up. I know that Tuesday they had a bumpy day, but they got recovered on Wednesday. And so from social involvement, there's a mood and arousal. Now here's applied behavioral analysis at the top, I'm sure you know, functional behavioral analysis. So it's antecedent behavior consequence. Functional just adds the function at the end, and then you make your behavior ineffective, inefficient, or irrelevant in meeting the function of behavior. In this case, the function is meeting the live parent's own emotional and psychological needs in the situation. So, the child's symptoms of rejecting a parent serve the function of providing rewards to the target or to the allied parent, the secondary gain of manipulating the court's decisions regarding custody and satisfying the revenge motivations for spousal abuse. And so what's happening in the family courts, at least when you have the allied parent producing false pathology in the child, is actually spousal abuse pathology. It's using the child as a weapon. Then in weaponizing the child as a weapon of spousal abuse, it produces such significant pathology in the child, it becomes child psychological abuse. But really we got a spousal abuse kind of pathology in the family courts. So, now that's the functional behavioral analysis description. So strategic family therapy description is the function is power, and the child's symptoms of rejecting a parent confers power to the allied parent regarding the custody. The court gives them custody because of the child's symptom. No matter what the court previously decided, they can get that overruled if they produce pathology in the child, and then, oh my goodness, and the false, restraining orders and all that kind of stuff. And it's gratifying the revenge motivations. And a child rejecting a parent, things after divorce, that's a pathology. That's not a crime. And so why moving that into the legal system. That's for crimes. We need it over to the healthcare system where we get treatment. But the pathological, narcissistic, borderline, dark personality parent, dark triad, vulnerable, dark triad, dark tetra, incredibly manipulative. So they are driving us into the wrong system for a solution because everybody fights about things. There's long delays. It's really expensive with attorneys. It's all a spousal abuse thing. We need to get this back into the healthcare system, get it diagnosed and treated, instead of trying to fix it in the legal system, which is not designed for pathology, it's designed for crimes. So, looking at that's a behavioral way of seeing the program. If we look at a strategic family systems perspective, here's your family systems people. Everybody in the family course should know these three. Murray Bowen, family evaluation, Chloe Madonna, strategic family, and Salvador Minuchin, structural family. There's the pathology right there. What is it, page 42, family healing. Here you see a father and a son in a cross-generational coalition against a mother. You see the inverted hierarchy. You see the emotional cutoff right here. This one above is a mother and a son against the father, inverted hierarchy. You don't see the emotional cutoff in this one. That's down here. So you can have a cutoff and not cutoff, but there's your pathology right there. Right? Okay, and I read reports. These reports never discuss cross-generational coalitions, emotion. It's like, you guys don't even know family therapy when you're dealing with families. There it is. That's the pathology. The contingent visitation schedule alters how the child's symptoms confer power. So when the child's symptoms increase, time with the pathological parent's going to go down. When the child goes back to normal, time with that goes back to normal. So, but that is, critical to understand, because if the child's symptoms go up, we're going to attribute that to the aligned parent. You are abusing your child, creating increased symptoms with the targeted parent. If that's not true, if it's a targeted parent increasing that, then we're going to put the child right back into the abusive situation. No, don't do that. So it's really important to know which one, so we know which we're protecting the parent from. So here's the pathological situation. When we have the cutoff in the relationship with the targeted parent, but it has nothing to do with this parent. It's the pathology being created in the child by the pathological parent that's creating a cutoff. And that's the factitious disorder imposed on another. We're going to be treating this false pathology. Now, as we treat factitious disorder, I work Children's Hospital, factitious disorder, unless we remove that motivation to produce pathology in the child, we are always behind the curve. We're always trying to protect the child from a parent who's motivated to produce pathology in them. And so we're always doing this. Treatment for factitious disorder is to remove that motivation. That releases a child then, and we no longer have to protect the parent from all this stuff. So what we do, once we remove the motivation to produce pathology in the child's free. And we don't have to keep protecting them, we can relax and they're out of the middle. The contingent visitation schedule, based on the presence or the absence of symptoms, is designed to remove the motivation from the pathological parent to produce symptoms in the child. So right now, the motivations that they're getting, as I said, manipulating the court's decisions, well, that's not going to work in this case. They're not going to be able to manipulate. Spousal abuse of the other parent, that's not going to work either, you'll see why. And meeting their own needs, I'm the wonderful parent, that's not going to work either. We're making all of those ineffective rewards for that parent. So the program structure itself, as I said, successful day is defined as ratings of 4 or higher, I'd say 3 or higher, on all 3 scales. Successful week is 5 or more out of 7 days. Unsuccessful week is less than 5. So if there's an unsuccessful week, what's the contingency then? At that point, we do, if the 4 out of 7 days, we go into this contingency where you have not had a successful week. So you need to remain in the care of the targeted parent until you have 3 successful days. Once you have 3 successful days, it goes pop, right back to the court order's visitation. Because that parent's producing pathology in the child. You see the pathology child go up. We're going to leave you with the targeted parent so we can fix what they're causing, and we're going to remove the rewards of manipulating the court. And in addition, they want to produce pathology in the child to say, you're an abusive parent. But the moment we get the diagnosis of factitious, if they produce pathology in the child, we're going to say, no, you're the abusive parent. Totally reverses the spousal. And so now they don't want to be an abusive parent. They're getting labeled. They're not getting the child. And so we're removing all the rewards for producing pathology in the child. And there's no makeup days, as they say. So here's an example of what that would look like. On the top is a successful week. 2 bad days, but 5 days out of 7, okay. So the next week, the custody change happens, just like the court said. I use 50-50 because it's just easier explanation, but you can work with the schedule. An unsuccessful week, you see, 4 days out of 7, so that was unsuccessful. Now the child has to remain with the targeted parent until they get 3 successful days. First day they didn't get that. Okay, next day. Yes, yes, yes. Now the change takes place, but there's no makeup time. So the 3 days with the alive parent, and then back to the targeted parent. Ah, geez. So now, what we've done, right now, the child is showing loyalty to the alive parent by rejecting the other parent. By switching contingencies around, now I can tell my child, you know what? To be loyal to that parent, you need to be nice to this one. Then everything stays, and you get more time with them and everything. And so we've shifted how loyalty is being communicated. So a lot of, and 3 successful days. Serious breach. What happens if the kid runs away or there's violence? What happens then? Definition in the program is the child remains in the custody care of the normal range targeted parent for 2 weeks. If you have violence or runaway, that parent is producing severe pathology in the child. Runaway is a conduct disorder. Violence is getting conduct. That's pretty severe. And so if you get to that level, then we need to get the child over with the healthy, normal targeted parent until we get stabilized on that. And then 3 successful days before we go back again. 2 weeks. So that, again, provides a lot of motivation to not produce this level of pathology in the child because it's not going to work for your rewards. However, this one in particular, but the contingency on the other one as well, is the exact reason why it's not for authentic child abuse. If I have a targeted parent who's abusing the child and the child is running away from that parent, and I put that child back with the abusive parent, no. So we need an accurate diagnosis on that. Which parent is abusing the child, so we know which parent to protect the child from. And if it's false factitious pathology, then we say, if the child shows symptoms, it's you causing it, not you. And we're comfortable and confident in that. And they can act with that confidence relative to the child. The child says, oh, no, I've looked at it. That's a normal range parent. Everything's fine. There's no reason for your symptom. You have to have that confidence before we do that. So diagnosis guides treatment, and in this situation, what is your diagnosis is critical. Let's just talk a second about forensic custody evaluations because they don't diagnose. They don't like to pathologize families. However, what I find is even as I review a custody evaluation, one of my major complaints to the court and to everybody is even after the custody evaluation, we still need a diagnosis. So we still need another assessment. Why didn't we just get that right up front? And then we don't need the custody evaluation because we have the diagnosis and we can go straight to treatment. Parents save a lot of money, save 6 to 9 months on possible child. Let's just move to the diagnosis right up front. However, if we do that, then nobody's going to get the forensic custody. And so like right now, there's a lot of forensic custody evaluators who lose their career if we switch to diagnosis. So that's the other element. We need clinicians in the family courts, not custody evaluators. have enough of them. We don't have enough people in the diagnosis and enough support. So, again, describing how this eliminates the secondary gain. So the first is manipulating the court's decision. Well, it's no longer doing that. The targeted parent gets more time with the child, not less time, when they produce pathology in the child. The spousal abuse targeted parent, again, that's not working. Before they got less time and I got the child. Now they get the child and I don't. And then that whole idea of the narcissist, I'm the all wonderful parent. No, you're not, you're an abusive parent. I'm, the children, regulatory object abandonment fears. Well, you can see them less. So if you want to see them more, stop producing pathology. If you want us to say you're wonderful, stop producing pathology. Otherwise, we're going to come up with a different opinion. The outcome measure. All treatment, clinical psychology, should have an outcome measure. If you're doing treatment for depression, back depression inventory. If you're doing treatment for anxiety, just a SUD scale 1 to 10, how bad was your anxiety today? All treatment should have outcome measures. Treatment in family courts never did. So, this is my outcome measure I recommend. Is Likert scale, 3 ratings, affection, cooperation, social involvement, easy peasy. I've got even a little form up there on my website. Authors have it as the standard Likert scale. Let me close off today by talking about the difference between forensic custody evaluations and clinical psychology in family courts. I'm a clinical psychologist. I do not conduct forensic custody evaluations for a variety of reasons. In my opinion, forensic custody evaluations are a failed experiment in service delivery to a vulnerable population. They are an experimental approach. Clinical psychology is based in healthcare, diagnosis and treatment, going all the way back to the Greek physicians. Forensic psychology and these custody evaluations developed in the 1980s as an experiment of the psychologists moving from healthcare over into the legal system to be mini judges and so. Now, it's the pathological parent is driving us into the legal system to manipulate everybody. And if you believe that's where it is, you're being manipulated. The solution is not in the family courts, it's in treatment. And so the custody evaluations land at the wrong point. They land on what's the custody decision. No, the landing point is what's the treatment. And that's clinical. And we need a diagnosis, but they're not giving us a diagnosis. So this is from the New York Blue Ribbon Commission on Forensic Custody Evaluation. Independent review of forensic custody evaluation, 2022, New York Blue Ribbon Commission. By an 11 to 9 margin, the majority of commission members favor elimination of forensic custody evaluations entirely. They want to get rid of all mental health services in the court because what we're giving them is so bad. They would rather have no mental health services rather than what we're given. Because, look, reports are biased, harmful to children. That's a powerful statement for somebody to make, doing a big review, and they say this is harmful to children. Lacks scientific or legal value. They're not mincing words here. They're not putting any qualified. They're coming straight at it. And are dangerous. What the psychologists are doing is dangerous. I'm a clinical psychologist treating the targeted parents for their trauma of having their children ripped away when they're a normal range parent. And the children are being ripped away by the decisions of a forensic psychologist. So you have a clinical psychologist in the family courts treating the trauma being caused by the forensic psychologist taking children away. Please stop doing that. Please stop causing trauma in these people so I can stop treating it. Please, your psychologist, stop traumatizing your parents, your patient, by taking their children. Or tell me why they're abusive and what we need to protect, physical, sexual. But if they're not abusing the child, don't take their children away. So, the commission members, these members, reached the conclusion that the practice is beyond reform, that there's no amount of training for the courts, forensic evaluators, or other court personnel that will successfully fix the bias and conflict of interest issues that exist within the system. And that's currently what's happening, is we have forensic psychologists at the top level. We need clinical diagnostic assessment. But if we get that, their careers are gone, because that's not what they do. So they don't want clinical assessments of the family. So that's kind of a conflict of interest at this point. That they have one model, and it's a failed model. 11 to 9, they say get rid of it. This is a discussion of the Blue Ribbon Commission by 2 of the commissioners, both attorneys. Recommend you Google it, listen to it. This will describe their findings about forensic custody. And one of the things you note at the end, how these attorneys are both anguished about eliminating custody evaluations because then they have no mental health services. And you see them say, but what we got is so bad, we have to just have no mental health services. We don't know what to do about that, but this is not okay. So that's a valuable piece. Now, in closing, as a clinical psychologist, this is a clinical psychology solution, not a forensic custody. You have 2 litigants, they're making cross allegations of abuse. I don't know which is true, which is false when I first enter. One saying it's you being abusive, the other is you by symptoms or direct allegations, the other one saying, no, that's not true, delusional disorder, it's a false attachment, pathology, factitious disorder. So they're being cross allegations. So we need a clinical diagnostic assessment, which one of you is abusing the child. Now, we know it's going to be a disputed diagnosis is going in the court system. The appellate system for a disputed diagnosis is second opinion. So let's get the second opinion right up front and stop all the fighting. You can do that through telehealth. And I am currently, parents are getting court orders to do this. So each parent is allowed to appoint a expert to serve in telehealth as on this assessment. I'm getting appointed by court order as soon as ABA finishes. That's one thing I'm going to be doing an assessment in California where I'm licensed through telehealth as a second opinion. So these court orders are happening as we speak. And that's again, when I'm working in Virginia, Arizona, Colorado or something, I'm not licensed in those states. I'm the second opinion guy. I need a license there to conduct the assessment. You log into my online office, doxing me, Dr. Childress, you flip the monitor around, I'm sitting in your room listening to everything going on, we talk before, talk after, we come, and the opposing party can assign their own expert, and they're great. We have 3 psychologists there, all talking about what the diagnosis is. And that gives us a confidence to then say, when the child says, they're abusing me, I go, no, they're not. Because we've got second opinions, we've got all this support that we can feel comfortable overriding that allegation of abuse and saying, no, it's a factitious disorder. If we're not confident in that, that's exactly the wrong thing to do. So we get second opinions on it. That then goes into the court's decision and ultimately into treatment. So this is what the clinical solution looks at, start to finish, is you have the court, you have 2 litigants, you get a diagnostic assessment, you get the 2 consultants on it for second opinion. Then, as it moves into treatment, the treatment provider has 2 consultants available on the treatment. And so that's why it's valuable to get those consultants. That's how we both improve the quality of healthcare services, and that's how we deal with disputed diagnosis in healthcare. Doctor, this hurts. Let's get an orthopedic consult. You go to the orthopedic person, he says, well, that's a little weird, let's get the 3rd consult. We do that all the time as doctors. So we need to bring that into the family courts to improve the quality of mental health services. And so, with that, that's my talk on the contingent visitation schedule. You can get a hold of me anytime. I'm happy to consult. Let me open it up. Any questions?